Hello and welcome to haQ. My name is Jakob. I'm your host, and you're watching a haQ episode. In this episode, we're going to go through my list of my top 5 sampler/looper apps, and they're all unique in some way, shape, or form. So these are apps that can do sampling, manipulate samples, and looping. So basically, it has some kind of a sequencer or some kind of a looping function. Now, all of these apps are universal. And when I say universal, when I talk about iOS music making, it basically means that it works for both iPhone and iPad. However, I've chosen to showcase all of these apps using an iPhone because most of them were made with a portrait mode in mind. Some of these also have landscape modes, and I will point that out as we go along. You know, initially this was gonna be a top 6 list, but I decided on making it a top 5. But I still want to talk about that that app number 6. And so the only way I can do that is in a honorable mention, I think. And so I'll do that at the end of this list. So stick with me and we'll get there. Now, I've chosen apps that I've used a lot, and I've used them a lot because they all do something differently from one another. Not only that, they also do whatever they do really well. Okay, so the listing order in this video for these apps will be release dates. So we're gonna start with the oldest app on my list, and we're gonna move up to the newest one. I'll be highlighting what it is about each and every one of these apps that makes them so special to me and why I think you should check them out. And hey, pay attention to the feature splash screen. You know, these ones, green means that something is supported, red means something is not supported. First up, we have Loopy. Now, this one was released back in 2011, so it is 8 years old, but it had its most recent update on the 26th of August 2019. Now, the biggest reason to why I choose Loopy to be on this list, and the biggest reason to why I keep coming back to it, is because out of all of these apps that I'm going to talk about, this one is the only one that is completely and fully MIDI mappable. Each and every one of the features inside Loopy can be mapped and accessed through a MIDI controller. Now, sure, I'm listing apps that are great to use just as they are on your iDevice without any external hardware. But if you are one of those performance artists that want to use kind of a looping pedal or something like that, then you can very easily set up a mapping for a MIDI controller with Loopy and get some real live looping action going with hardware. Now, sure, it will take you some time to map out a full session. I know because I've done it myself. In this video, I am using a Nano Control Studio from Korg. It's a really nice controller that works over Bluetooth or USB MIDI. But the thing is, everything you see on that controller has been mapped to something inside Loopy. Every button, every fader, every knob, everything has been mapped to something inside Loopy. And so I can start a recording, I can delete stuff, I can jump between loops, I can control panning, I can control volume. There's so many things you can do. So it will take you some time, but once you've set your MIDI controller up, you don't have to do it again. And this whole MIDI mapping business is really what makes Loopy so special to me, apart from it being a very, very quick tool. And it really is a very, very quick tool. The interface has been brilliantly made for a touch interface, so everything is accessible. It's easy to get into the extra features inside each of these loop holders. You can have up to 12 loops going at a time, so basically 12 tracks or loops or 12 samples, depending on how you see it. Now, Loopy also has the ability to do internal recording, so you can basically turn on record and then perform something within the app and have that saved as an audio file. You can also import audio from other apps, export audio from Loopy. All in all, Loopy is an extremely useful tool, and I can't even begin to recommend it high enough. Michael from AudioBuzz has done a great job with this app, and he's kept this one running for so many years. Next up is an app named Yellowfire. Now, this one was released back in April 2013, and I might be stretching it a little bit by recommending this one because it hasn't had an update in almost a year. The most recent update was back in January 2018, but still, this app does something differently than all of the other apps, and so that's why I want you to try it out, or at least consider it. What's special with Yellowfire? Well, first of all, it doesn't work like any of the other apps because it doesn't deal with really long samples.
Okay, that sounds good.
So it basically takes samples up to 20 seconds in length, which isn't much, I know, but it also makes you make the most of what you have. Anything you record into this app or anything you send into this app, because you can also import your own audio. Well, whatever you import or record will be placed inside one of the two banks, A or B. And then you have to chop it up by pulling these slice lines to wherever spots you want them to be. And then you just trigger the slices by pressing the corresponding buttons. You just look at the color. So yellow for yellow, blue for blue.
Very nice.
This is not actually what makes it special. What makes it special is when you go into the sequencer, because the sequencer contains these effects that you can put on each of the notes that you place inside the sequencer. If you've placed a note with an effect on it, then you can switch the mode of that effect by tapping and holding down that note and then sliding to the right, and you'll see a little animation and you've changed how that effect works. This app is extremely fun to work with, and that's what I like with it, this effect interface. Whenever I use it, I keep making music I would not make with any other app because of this interface, and that's the thing. Because when you're using a different interface, when you're sitting in a different environment, it helps you in thinking differently about what you're doing or the way you go about things. And so you'll get unexpected results. And for me, that's very important for my creativity. If I sit and work with the same tools all the time, I just keep making the same type of music or the same type of videos or the same type of anything. By switching out my toolset and switching out my environment, my productive, creative environment, I'm also changing out what I'm making. Yellowfire is extremely quick to work with, and I quite like the colorful interface and the simple way that you use the effects, and I do recommend it. And if you do go and try it, just know that there are actually two versions of Yellowfire on the App Store. The only difference between these two apps are the factory samples. So in both apps you can find samples taken from music made by the group Yellow. And the electrified version, well, it contains samples from the electrified album. Next up is Blox Wave. Now this was released back in May 2016 and it's had its most recent update in August 2019. Now, this became a very popular app very quickly, and it's not surprising because one of the biggest strengths of this app is the way that it locks to tempo and it does beat matching really well together with time stretching. And the time stretching helps you when you want to pitch stuff up and down. This is my iOS sound. My sweet iOS sound. This is my iOS sound. My sweet iOS sound. All of this makes it a very powerful remix tool, especially when you just throwing loops into the app from different projects. And that's how I've been using this app myself. You see, I have a folder full of loops that I've exported from varying types of projects in all kinds of genres, in all kinds of BPMs, in all kinds of pitches. And the thing is, I'm able to fit them together into Blox Wave thanks to being able to beat match stuff and thanks to the time stretching and pitching and stuff like that. Now, I do want to mention though that there are some pro features inside Blox Wave that you can only access through in-app purchases. So if you want the ability to import audio files into Blox Wave, put your own loops in there, then you have to do an in-app purchase. And there is a pro bundle that will give you access to this. It will also give you access to an equalizer and some other stuff. This is my iOS sound. My sweet iOS sound. So the reason to why I put Blox Wave on this list is because of its biggest strength. This one was carefully made to handle loops really well. Loops from all kinds of genres, in all kinds of BPMs, in all kinds of pitches, while at the same time giving you the right type of tools that will allow you to mix and match non-fitting stuff together in order to create something new and cohesive. Now, I want to take the opportunity here to highlight something because I've gotten some comments and questions from viewers that have been watching previous videos I've made where I'm featuring Blox Wave, and they're wondering if you can connect a keyboard to Blox Wave, and you can't really do that. I mean, you can hack around it and control some features. If you look at this video from my buddy Mitch here, he's called The Audio Dabbler. You can watch that video. He does some cool stuff with Audio Bus and Blox Wave. However, there's no direct implementation of MIDI. But Blox Wave does support exporting projects from Blox Wave into the Launchpad app. So if you're a Launchpad user, then if you do use something like a launch key, then you have full control over your project. And so in essence, you can control your project with MIDI. But yeah, you got to use another app. Either way, Blox Wave is really powerful, and I do think that you should try it if you haven't yet. Okay, so next up is an app called Loopfield. This one is rather new, so it was released in November 2018, and its most recent update was in August 2019. Now, this one is a bit special. It does something that none of the others do, and it's basically a continuous recorder with a looping function. But basically, you turn it on, it starts recording, and it starts looping stuff in segments. It's a very interesting app, and when you're using it, you never really know what will come out of it. Now, you can, of course, lock the loop or the place where it loops. And you also have two tracks in it, actually. Apart from this track that does the continuous recording and looping, you also have a sample player track where you can load your own loops. And inside this app, there are already drum loops and stuff that you can use in the background. Normally, I don't like randomization. I like controlled chaos. So completely random stuff is not something I like. What I like about this one is that it loops stuff according to a tempo. So even though whatever I'm recording might be random, it will always loop it according to a tempo. So it's kind of a controlled chaos type situation. Now, this one can also be used in an FX slot in AUM, for instance, and be used as an FX plugin, because it does have FX that allows you to manipulate whatever you're recording, of course. This one I especially recommend for those of you who are like me, you know, four on the floor type of people that keep making the same stuff and the same beats over and over again. Then I do recommend this app because it would force you to do something different. And that's very good for your creative output in the long run. Yeah, there's really not much more I can say about this app. It's really fun to use, and it's interesting because of the randomization, controlled randomization. And so yeah, try it out. However, I would like to point out that before I move on to the next one and the last one on the list, I have included a honorable mention that I do talk about a considerable amount towards the end. And I want to highlight it because whenever I talk about sampling and sampling apps, there is this one app I never really recommend or talk about. And whenever that happens, well, I do get comments from iOS veteran musician viewers who ask me, Jacob, why don't you ever talk about this app? So stick with me to the end and you'll find out which app I'm talking about and why I don't really recommend it. Right, so the last app on this list is Koala Sampler. This one is one of my absolute favorites. It was released in February 2019 and the most recent update was in July 2019. So, it's very much akin to the Boss SP404 or a pocket operator, the PO33. And while on the topic on SPs and pocket operators, have you seen these cases from Beatmaker's Boutique? They're cases for the Pocket Operator 33, but they've actually got a case that looks like an SP303. And they also had a case looking like the attaQ MPC. These are the most gorgeous cases I've ever seen for pocket operators. Unfortunately, they did a limited run of these. They're hand-built, and so I get why you do a limited run, and they're all sold out, and it's a real shame. Never mind. So let's get back to the topic. Koala Sampler. I actually did a video not too long ago named Koala Sampler, an iPhone pocket operator or something along those lines. I do suggest you go check that video out for a deep look into this app and why I love it so much. This thing has up to 64 sample slots, it can do 32 patterns, it has mic input effects, like effects that you can put on everything that you record, and not only that, if you connect stuff to the app, either virtually, internally inside the iPhone or iPad, or if you connect a hardware interface, those effects can be used on the direct input too. The cool thing is that when you've made something with this app, you have live performance effects, 2 pages of them, like stutter, gate, reverb, loads of awesome effects. The live effects is also one of the reasons why I'm comparing Koala Sampler to the pocket operators, because the pocket operators will allow you to put live effects on there. Yeah, it's so much fun to do after you've built a beat, and Koala Sampler allows you to do exactly that. This was actually one of the things that made me come back to Koala Sampler all the time. Now, apart from that, another thing I really like is the way that Koala Sampler just trims everything record into it automatically, so you always end up with perfect samples to use. It's such a straightforward app. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I love the mix of the colors. And when you want to record stuff, you simply press and hold. When you want to delete stuff, you just drag stuff to a paper basket. It's just such a breeze to work with. Bringing your own samples into Koala Sampler is very, very straightforward because it's got a direct support of audio share. So whenever you're importing something, you're basically opening up audio share. When you want to export stuff, you have multiple options. You can export just samples, just loops, current loops, and you can do all of that with the opening command, so you can send it pretty much to any other app that supports that protocol. Koala Sampler even allows you to export the project as an Ableton Live set. So if you are also a desktop musician or you're using a laptop or something like that with Ableton Live, then you can bring your Koala Sampler project into Ableton Live. This one is hot. Okay, so we have now reached the end of this list, but as I've mentioned several times during this video, I do have one more app to talk about, a sampler app. It's an honorable mention, and the sampler app I'm talking about is Sampler, so SAMPLR. Now, Sampler is the best of the best, the creme of the creme. The creme of the creme, can you even say that? It does it like nothing else does it. It really utilizes the touch interface on an iDevice. It's groundbreaking in the way that it works and what it actually offers as a sample playback and sample manipulating app. There's so many ways that you can loop your stuff and do sequences of your stuff. It's just, it's perfect. Five out of 5, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. It's just so great. So why am I not recommending it? Well, it was released in November 2012, and the most recent update that this app received was back in December 2014. So it ran good for 2 years, and then the developer actually got picked up by Apple and started working there, most likely because Apple saw what he did with Sampler and the coding he did there, so they probably wanted him on the team. I'm just guessing. I'm guessing, okay? I'm guessing. Don't take this as facts. What he did with Sampler is just simply amazing. There is nothing on the App Store that quite does it like Sampler does it.
This recording.
Problem is the most recent update in 2014, so it is abandoned. And that's why I don't recommend it. Okay, listen up. A lot of users have already started reporting sampler being broken on newer devices or newer versions of iOS, and moving forward, into iOS 13, who knows what's going to happen. It might even disappear completely. It's using the IAA protocol. Yeah, I don't recommend it, but at the same time, if you haven't experienced Sampler, you should, at least before it disappears. And so it might be worth kind of wasting your money on it. You're not actually wasting it if you get to experience it, but it is worth checking out to see how good sampling, sample manipulation, and sample playback can really get on an iDevice. And that concludes this section of the honorable mention. Now, making episodes like this takes a huge amount of time. I've been working on this episode for a week. But if you like this type of content, then tell me through the like button. So hit that like button if you felt that you were entertained by this video, or if you learned something, if you found something new, some new apps you want to try out, or if you just want to support this channel. Also, this was my list of my top 5 iPhone and iPad looper/sampler apps. And if you have your own list, or if there are apps that you think should be mentioned, then leave a comment. Just don't do that boring thing where you just write a name of an app. Explain why you like that one, because it's really helpful for people reading comments. They might look at my video, they might not be satisfied with what I'm presenting, and they might be looking for some other stuff. And so then you have the chance to help someone else out. Maybe you find that perfect app that I didn't talk about in this list. Now, if you want to support me in a financial way, then I do suggest that you check out my music on, iTunes. And you know what? You can find all of the links for my Mellow album, an album that I released earlier this year. And if you haven't heard it, it's new music to you, and you should go check it out. You can find it if you go to jakobhack.com/music. You can also check out my latest track on Bandcamp. And if you don't want to do that, you can always support me through Patreon or PayPal. And you can also share these videos, which I do appreciate a whole lot. Also follow me on Instagram and tag me whenever you're doing something with music, because I love that stuff. And that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching. All comments and ratings are very much appreciated. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.